Hi and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to make a watercolor background, and here I'm wetting my paints so it's easier to get them out of the pens. And with this watercolor background I will make two artist trading cards. The paints I'm using today are from Van Gogh, and the box on the top is from Paul Rubens. It's their opera set, and the paper I'm working on is just some cheap watercolor paper from Fabriano. It's not a cotton watercolor paper. I start by applying my paints just intuitively, and I'm only using pinks and yellows and kind of reddish colors. I feel this is a nice exercise in between to spend some creative time. It's not very difficult and you can just play with your watercolors. Paul Rubens sent me these opera watercolors with a special anniversary gift. I don't have to make a review on them, so this is not a real review. I just really enjoy working with these bright and saturated colors, especially with this red that I have just used. You maybe see it. It has a really interesting granulation. I will add a second layer to this background once it's dry to create more depth. This is also a great way to explore your paints if you are new to watercolors, and it's also a good chance to use some special watercolors such as metallics or granulating colors. You will find a blog post linked up in my video description, and there I will have some close-up images of the background and also of the finished artist trading cards. Here I just added some water droplets because they will create a very nice texture while the background is drying. I will let this dry completely, and then I will come back and create another layer on top. I am back, and here you can see that this one opera red color had a really nice granulation. I will use that same color again because I liked it so much. Usually everybody has a certain brush stroke, and so I turned my paper 90 degrees to get kind of a different texture. I have also brought out my more opaque watercolors. These are pastel watercolors, and I just want to add some touches of them here and there on the background. I usually feel if you have opaque watercolors that are mixed with white pigment, they maybe take off the brightness of a watercolor background. That's, I think, the lovely thing about watercolors. They are so transparent, and that gives you a lot of light in your painting, and it makes the colors shine. And so I try not to add too much of these opaque spots, just a little bit here and there. Here I'm going in with a much darker color. It's the ultramarine violet from Daniel Smith, which is a lovely granulating color, but I wanted to have a little bit of contrast, and that dark violet is perfect together with the yellow orange. I will now let this dry, and then I will be back, and I will do some stamping, but not with usual stamping inks. I am going to use my watercolors for that. I decided to pick that lovely rainbow stamp from our Pencil Marks number 3. It's only on the clear set, and I start with stamping it in pink with these opera watercolors, and I also want to stamp it with some gold metallic watercolor. Of course, when you are stamping with watercolors, you will not get a perfect image, but you will get some really interesting textures. And I also stamp it more than only once with one layer of paint. You can experiment, you can add thicker or thinner paint. You can spritz the paint with a little bit of water when it's on the stamp. And you can, of course, use many different stamps to try out how this will turn out. I'm going to stamp a lot of these rainbows because I plan to cut this piece apart into the size of an artist trading card, which is 3.5 inches by 2.5 inches, and so I want to make sure that I have that rainbow on every card. I will also use that orangey color I have on the background to stamp, so I get some different textures. And here I spritz the stamp with water to just get off some more of the paint, which leaves a really light impression on the background. Now I'm going to add some of that metallic gold color. It's from Paul Rubens, the Gucci watercolors, and I will have a review video on these paints on my channel. I'm not sure when, but maybe next week, because I don't have in mind when this video will go live. Instead of an ink pad, I just apply the paint to my working surface, which is a glass plate. Some kind of a plastic will work too, and also a jelly plate can work maybe. And then I dip my stamp into the paint. I will also make sure to cover the corners of the background, because if there is nothing, they often look a little bit empty. Finally, I will add some gold splatters with these paints for even more texture, and because I love splatters. When the background is dry, I will cut the artist trading cards from it, and then I'm going to decorate them. And here I forgot to press record, and what I did was I added that stamping with the stamp from the Mixed Media Marks stamp set with some black VersaFine clear ink. And what I also did, I made some marks with a Neocolor 2 crayon, and that's all. I picked turquoise because it is a really nice contrast. Here I have cut some leaves from a background that I had laying around forever. It's a super thin paper, and that is a little bit difficult to stick it down, but I really love how this is looking, and I want to adhere it to my background. The dye I have used was from Dynamics, and I am pretty sure this company does not exist anymore, but you can use any kind of detailed leaf dye to create a similar effect. The glue stick didn't work, so I decided to switch over to the glossy accents, which is my favorite glue. The only thing I don't like is that it often clogs. I just placed the box of that stamp pad on top to make sure everything adheres well. I cut off the overlapping piece, but just the one on the bottom. And as my focal images, I decided to use these butterflies that you can see on the left. I have embossed them with white powder, and there are two different ways to do this. You can either start by coloring your background with watercolors, let that dry, and then do the embossing. This is what I've done with this butterfly. And with the second one, I did the embossing first and then I colored it in with watercolors. But the first way works a bit better because although embossing acts as a resist, it gets a little bit of that pigment and it's also difficult to wipe it away. So I would recommend coloring in everything first, let that dry, and then do the embossing. Well, that only works if you use one color. If you want to color in the butterfly with different colors in certain areas, you of course have to do the embossing first. I will now stick down the butterflies, and finally I will also add a sentiment to each card because that just makes it look a bit better and more interesting. The words I'm adding are from my Mix a Sentiment stamp sets. I usually stamp them completely and then I cut out the words that I need. And that was my video for today. I hope you enjoyed it and you are inspired to make maybe some artist trading cards. Check out my blog post for some detailed images, and then we will see us next week. Bye!